Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and I hope you're having a peaceful and meaningful day. That evening in the studio carried a feeling that was hard to explain but impossible to ignore. The lights were bright as always, the audience buzzed with anticipation, and the cameras moved with their familiar precision. Yet something in the air felt heavier, more intimate. Mark Consuelo stood in the spotlight, a place he had occupied countless times before, but this moment felt stripped of performance. Millions watching from home expected warmth, humor, and ease, the qualities they had come to associate with him over the years. Instead, there was a quiet seriousness in his expression, not tense or troubled, but reflective. When a simple question about love was asked, it opened a door no one expected. Mark didn't rush to answer or lean into charm. He paused, breathed, and spoke as someone choosing honesty over polish, signaling that what followed would be personal, thoughtful, and deeply real. When confidence makes room for reflection. Mark had long been seen as someone comfortable in his own skin, confident yet approachable, steady in both career and personal life. That night, however, he allowed a different side to surface, one shaped by introspection rather than certainty. His voice softened as he spoke, and the room leaned in, sensing that this was not a rehearsed anecdote or a promotional soundbite. He wasn't presenting answers so much as sharing questions he had been sitting with for some time. This shift didn't weaken his presence, it strengthened it. By allowing reflection to replace performance, Mark reminded everyone that confidence doesn't mean having everything figured out. Sometimes it means being willing to speak thoughtfully about the things that don't come with easy explanations, especially when it comes to love, change, and the passage of time. The weight of speaking. Honestly, about love. I think we don't talk enough about how love can change, even when it's real, Mark said quietly, and in that moment, the studio grew still. His words weren't dramatic or definitive, they were gentle and open ended, inviting listeners to reflect rather than react. Love, as he described it, wasn't something fragile or fleeting, but something living, something that evolves as people do. He wasn't dismissing commitment or devotion. Instead, he was acknowledging that relationships exist within the larger context of growth, responsibility, and individual journeys. His honesty carried weight not because it hinted at loss, but because it validated an experience many people carry silently. The realization that love can remain meaningful even as it shifts shape over time. Love beyond the highlight. Real. For years, the public had seen snapshots of Mark's life that suggested effortlessness, smiles on red carpets, shared laughter, moments of visible partnership. Those images weren't false, but they were incomplete, as all public images tend to be. Mark's reflection gently reminded viewers that love is not a static image frozen in time. It's a process shaped by daily choices, conversations, compromises, and growth that often happens away from cameras. By speaking this truth aloud, he offered a more realistic and compassionate understanding of relationships, one that allows room for change without assigning blame or failure. Love, he suggested, isn't diminished by complexity, it's deepened by it. Growth as a natural part of connection. As he continued, Mark spoke about how people grow not only together but also individually, sometimes in ways that are unexpected. Growth doesn't always mean separation, and separation doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes it simply means learning, adjusting, and redefining what connection looks like in different seasons of life. His words carried no bitterness, only clarity. He acknowledged effort, care, and intention, emphasizing that love's value isn't measured solely by permanence but by sincerity. In doing so, he reframed the idea of change as something natural rather than something to fear, reminding everyone that relationships are shaped by the same forces that shape people: time, experience, and self-discovery. The power of pausing instead of explaining. One of the most striking aspects of the moment was what Mark didn't say. He offered no details, no timelines, no personal revelations meant to satisfy curiosity. Instead, he allowed space for silence, for reflection, for listeners to connect his words to their own lives rather than to headlines. That restraint spoke volumes. It demonstrated respect for privacy and an understanding that not every truth needs to be fully unpacked to be meaningful. Sometimes a shared understanding is enough. In a world that often demands immediate clarity and explanation, Mark's willingness to pause felt grounding, a reminder that some experiences are meant to be felt rather than dissected. Love as something that leaves a mark. Mark spoke about love as something that doesn't simply disappear when circumstances change. It lingers in lessons learned, perspectives gained, and empathy developed. Even when relationships evolve, the influence they leave behind continues to shape how people show up in the world. This idea resonated deeply because it reframed endings not as erasures but as transformations. Love, in this view, is not wasted when it changes. It becomes part of who we are, informing future connections and deepening our understanding of ourselves and others. His words offered comfort to anyone who has ever questioned the value of a relationship that didn't look the same forever. The audience's quiet recognition. As Mark spoke, the audience responded not with applause but with stillness, a collective recognition of something deeply familiar. At home, viewers shared similar reactions, feeling seen and understood rather than entertained. Social media lit up, not with speculation, but with personal stories, reflections, and gratitude. People recognized themselves in his words, recalling relationships that shaped them, taught them, and helped them grow even when they didn't follow a simple or expected path. In that moment, the distance between celebrity and audience dissolved, replaced by a shared human experience that transcended status or circumstance. Vulnerability as strength, not exposure. What made the moment so powerful was its restraint. Mark didn't present vulnerability as confession or exposure. He didn't frame himself as broken or uncertain. Instead, he showed that vulnerability can exist alongside strength, that reflection doesn't undermine stability. By speaking thoughtfully about love's complexity, he modeled emotional maturity, demonstrating that acknowledging change is not the same as rejecting commitment. It's a recognition that real connection requires honesty, adaptability, and respect for growth, both shared and individual. After the cameras stopped rolling, when the show ended, the conversation didn't fade. Viewers carried it with them, replaying not just the words, but the tone, the pauses, the care with which Mark spoke. Headlines may have tried to frame the moment as something dramatic, but those who listened closely understood its quieter significance. It wasn't about revealing a private turning point, it was about offering perspective. In the calm that followed, the impact of his words settled gently, encouraging reflection rather than reaction. Private moments of gratitude. Later, away from the lights and the audience, Mark reflected privately on his own experiences with love, partnership, and growth. There was no sense of regret, only gratitude for the moments that had shaped him. Love, he understood, leaves lasting impressions not because it lasts forever in one form, but because it teaches us how to care, how to listen, and how to grow. These lessons don't disappear when circumstances change. They become part of a person's emotional foundation, influencing how they move forward with compassion and clarity. The response from those watching. The messages that followed were filled with honesty and appreciation. People shared how Mark's words helped them reframe their own experiences, letting go of guilt or disappointment tied to relationships that had changed over time. Many expressed relief at hearing love described without absolutes, without the pressure of perfection. His reflection gave people permission to honor their past without feeling defined by them, and to approach future connections with openness rather than fear. Redefining what love means. Through this moment, Mark helped redefine love not as something fragile that must be preserved at all costs, but as something resilient that adapts and teaches. Love, he suggested, is not measured by how long it stays the same, but by how deeply it is felt and how thoughtfully it is lived. This perspective doesn't diminish commitment, it deepens it, grounding it in realism rather than idealization. It acknowledges that real love exists within real lives shaped by time, responsibility, and growth. Moving forward with clarity. As Mark continues forward, he does so with a clearer understanding of what love has given him. Not answers, but insight, not certainty, but perspective. His willingness to reflect publicly, without oversharing, offered a model of how to engage with life's complexities gracefully. He showed that it's possible to honor connection while embracing change, to speak honestly without inviting speculation, and to share meaning without surrendering privacy. A message that reaches beyond the moment. Ultimately, this wasn't a story about endings or revelations. It was a reminder that love is layered, dynamic, and deeply human. Mark's reflection resonated because it spoke to something universal. The truth that relationships shape us even when they evolve. His words encourage listeners to approach love with curiosity rather than fear, gratitude rather than regret, and compassion rather than judgment. The beauty that remains love leaves something behind. Not loss, but understanding. Not emptiness, but growth. Mark's message lingered because it honored that truth. In speaking gently about change, he reminded everyone that love's beauty isn't diminished by complexity, it's revealed by it. And in that quiet, thoughtful moment, many were reminded that love, in all its forms, is one of life's greatest teachers, shaping who we are long after the moment itself has passed.